Hey guys, it's me, Dr. Ree. In this video, we're going to be looking at the cervical plexus. The cervical plexus is going to come out, it's going to be a collection of nerves that come out of the cervical spine from C1 to C5. C4 actually, C1 to C4. C5 is just kind of there for the ride. So from here to here, because C5 on is going to be part of our brachial plexus, and we're going to talk about that in the next video. So from here to here, from C1 to C4, we have our cervical plexus. So it's a collection of nerves that are coming out of that. We're going to go through each of them and label them on this. And in lab, you'll look a little bit closer at what they do and how they function. So you can also refer to your workbook, and it kind of talks a little bit more about each of the nerves. So C1, we can see right here this nerve that doesn't actually come out of the cervical spine at all. So this one's coming from above the cervical spine, and we know that it's coming from above, and which means it's coming from most likely the brain. And so this is going to be a cranial nerve. Specifically, this is cranial nerve 11, our spinal accessory nerve. Remember that came out of the jugular foramen, and if you don't remember any of that, make sure you go back and watch the cranial nerve video. The next one we also see coming from above, so the one a little more lateral to that, right there, is going to be our cranial nerve 12, hypoglossal, which comes out of the hypoglossal canal, and that is going to be all about the motor to the tongue. So those two are not part of the cervical plexus, but they are in the same area, so I just wanted to kind of show where they're at. Now let's talk about the nerves that are actually really part of the cervical plexus. So as it kind of comes down, and you can kind of see coming down and through and around, we call this kind of a round thing. That's where we have an ansa. So we call this, see how this is coming down and around? We call things that go and kind of connect to the other side, we call them ansas. So this one right here, let's see where the line is. The line for that, maybe I'll color that in. So as we come down and around, this coming down and around, that, which this arrow is kind of pointing out right there, is the ansa cervicalis. So that just means it's the nerve that's kind of looping around, where it loops around right there. And that will have some different nerves that kind of come out of that. Don't worry too much about those for lab. Might need to know for lecture, but for lab, don't worry about it. Now above, where we labeled that coming out from our C2, right here, we have these two nerves. The one that is on top is called the lesser occipital nerve. And the one right underneath that is the greater auricular nerve. Well, if I do an N with a dot, that's just a speedy way of writing nerve. And then this little one that we see coming out here from C2 and C3, that is going to be our transverse cervical nerve. And then coming out of C4 at the wee bottom is our supraclavicular nerves. And then this nerve right here, this is the one that you do need to know what it really does. Coming from C3, C4, and a little bit from C5 is our phrenic nerve. And the phrenic nerve is going to supply the diaphragm, which is one of the most important muscles involved in breathing. Besides, we talked about the intercostals when we did the skeletal anatomy, but the diaphragm is what goes down and allows the expansion of the lungs themselves. And so one way to remember that the phrenic nerve is the diaphragm is C3, 4, 5, right? Cranial nerve, or not cranial nerve, cervical spinal nerve 3, cervical spinal nerve 4, and cervical spinal nerve 5 are all going to be supplying the diaphragm. So we see that C3, C4, C5. Keeps the diaphragm alive. And that is the cervical plexus. In the next video, we're going to go on the brachial plexus. That video will be a little longer. It is one that innervates a lot of the muscles of the upper extremity, and so we will be talking not only about how to draw the brachial plexus, but what general muscles we'll be looking out for them. All right, I'll see you in the next one.